Hey, what's up, team? Super excited for this tradition that we are about to do. That's right. It is Logan's birthday this week on November 8th. So let's wish Logan a happy birthday. What?
It's your birthday It's your birthday Celebrate you best. Ladies, fuck change. Right, it's your destiny. Wait, so sweet, closest mates. It's your birthday It's your birthday I'll make your gift. Blow out your candles.
All right. Well, happy birthday, Logan. The world is a better place because you were born. Looking forward to seeing you at the Boston Spartan this week. And I'll buy you a beer there when it's over. So as far as the announcements go, Londonderry will be in the spotlight this week. After this recording, I'll have them pretty much take over this. We are visiting Destiny on Monday this week because we could not see her on Friday. So that means that I'm going to have spotty reception. And that is why I'm making this recording, to just kind of think ahead. So here's the announcements for local locations. You've heard about the Barrel House. Looks like we're going to try to do the apps to make it the least expensive. Everyone's invited. It doesn't have to just be local locations. We will do the Great Cook video. There's the cruise information. That cruise flyer is in Canva for you to duplicate it and put your own logo on it. Recommended read for the month. I'll still leave that up there. And then next week, Ithaca's in the spotlight. Other than that, I did want to make sure that we had 2 points of discussion today besides just putting Londonderry in the spotlight and seeing what they're doing. In fact, it's a great time for them to be in the spotlight because I know they're particularly interested in shirts. There's a couple of different stores that they'd like to clone. So I don't know what we can do to make a better share of things, but let's just talk about that this week. I want to just kind of mention that so that we can facilitate any conversation, any sharing of designs, like that kind of thing. Speaking of shirts, special shout out to Ricardo for all the hard work that he put in on that DECA champion shirt. That's really awesome. Great job with that. So let me move over here to our typical little weekly functional movement screen review here. Get logged in. Boom. Common sense approach. There we go. All right. So last week, I believe we were talking about the entry point.
We spent some time creating layers
of movement, screening for function.
About 30 years ago,
Okay.
I was sitting right where you're sitting.
Let me just make sure.
We spent, and we all.
Yeah, this is where we were last week. Okay. So we're going to be screening for function this week. Here we go.
About 30 years ago, I was sitting right where you're sitting now, with a vivid appreciation that we had gotten to a very advanced healthcare and fitness and sports development model. And we'd missed that functional linchpin that made everything work, even though we weren't even measuring it. Function was here on this planet. We were moving in a different way than we move now. And when that movement ceased to be what it used to be, we missed it. I was sitting right where you are right now as a young physical therapist, realizing that if I put you on the table and tested every joint in your body, I still couldn't predict if you could squat or not. That means that sometimes the whole is less than the sum of its parts. And healthcare was very, very, how can I say, specific in looking at your parts, but we never checked the whole of movement before we started throwing things on movement. So my colleagues and I were in a small town in a physical therapy clinic working with wellness and fitness and athletes and all aspects of movement related problems across the lifespan. Athletic trainers, physical therapists, strength coaches, all working in the same place. And we started saying, what if there was a functional screening model? And we started thinking, if we took a systematic approach to movement, functional movement systems, we've got to look at movement in a way that doesn't ever forget function. And just let me remind you, we didn't have to use the word function 150 years ago because function seemed to be present. Once function is lost, we can no longer say the word movement without putting the word function in front of it, because many people think they understand what function is and they don't know. So the very first thing we did as a group of people is said, I think that person's functional. Well, I think that person's dysfunctional. Well, how did you arrive at that opinion? And how did you arrive at this opinion? Because we don't do that when it comes to eye charts and blood pressure cuffs, do we? We have a hard system of standards, and we use that to enhance our communication and accountability. Well, I had a perfect petri dish as a young physical therapist to exercise communication and accountability with respect to this word that nobody was defining for us. We almost had to define it for ourselves. And we had to define it basically first and foremost by what it's not. It's not a medical issue and it's not a fitness issue. It's this thing where human beings have to get through postures and patterns to simply represent that they do have the operating system and the structure to learn new things, continue moving, be independent and sustainable across a lifespan. So we wanted to check a few boxes. Number one, babies come into the world with flexibility. Mobility is not a problem. So if you're going into a movement screen with mobility problems, we definitely want to be able to catch those. If you're going into a movement screen with stability, balance, or control problems, we want to catch those. We never want to do anything in one movement pattern because you've already seen that one movement pattern like squatting can actually be good, but lunging might be good on one side and bad on the other. So we've got to have multiple patterns. We've also got to have opportunities to look at you in fundamental positions before functional positions. What do I mean by that? You're laying down, you're lifting a leg up, or a functional position is you're squatting down. We've got to have an array of multiple patterns and positions so we can represent that growth and development milestone. So what we did as young movement professionals is we created a battery of movements that represented on your feet functional movements and off your feet fundamental movements that looked at not just flexibility, but patterning in the way you used your body in multiple positions. And from that, we had a scalable effect to sort of check boxes as we go. And instead of talking in a very comfortable way about your body as a collection of parts, for the very first time, we did something that I think changed our minds forever. We simply started talking about the human body as behavioral patterns. We trusted healthcare and said, if these things don't hurt, then we're not going to assume there's a healthcare problem. But if you can't do these things, there's a huge disconnect with your mind and your body, because here's one of the things that emerged. We had a lot of people that would look at a picture of a squat and say, yeah, I can squat. And they couldn't. Their confidence didn't match their reality. We had a lot of people that looked at this and said, I can't do that. And they could. Their confidence didn't match their reality. So stuff has happened in modern society that has actually made us less aware of our own body. And maybe it's because we consume so much media of other people's movement that we forget how we're connected to ours. We wanted a test that wasn't time expensive or equipment expensive. We wanted to get in and out and answer the question like you do on an eye chart or a BP cuff. I want to be able to check a box and say, that person's functional. Because once I know they are, we already had all the fitness information and that stuff works. And the reason fitness doesn't work for a lot of people is because they got these underlying functional problems and you don't do the same things to them. So as we started putting our heads together, we developed a screening process. We call it the functional movement screen. And it's simply a battery of postures and positions and patterns that we run you through with no assumption that we diagnose your problem. We simply say how many of these behaviors are good or bad. And if they're bad, we simply offer you a movement appreciation to re-get that movement before we load that movement, or a movement appreciation opportunity before we turn it into a medical problem that will probably add complexity for profit. So we're going to sit right here and get your function back. And some of you will see a lot of what we do here more like exercise. And some will see this more like an awareness or an experience. How to get your movement appreciation back, how to get your movement awareness back, and how to get this fundamental, authentic movement function back is a really neat path. And all the experiments and all the things that we can do to fix that doesn't matter a bit if we do not set a baseline. So the first thing we needed to concern ourselves with was not fixing the functional problem that was obvious right in front of our eyes. It was getting as confident about a functional screen as we were about an eye chart and a blood pressure cuff. How do you do that? Well, you got to come up with something, and then you got to run a bunch of bodies through it to see if it distributes people to the place they need to be the most, to healthcare, function, or fitness. And by doing that over about a 5-year period and not saying a word about it, we came up with this neat little battery of movement appreciation tests that we could do to find out something that I don't think we've ever been able to find out before, is how you feel. Movement is a language written in feel, not in words and pictures, because you feel your way through the environments when you're going through that first 21 months. You feel a loss of balance and you feel reclaiming that balance. You get to feel all of that. And when we run you through some movement patterns and we get used to seeing those movement patterns and doing those movement patterns, and we realize you can't do these or you can do those, we start to get an appreciation of how you feel, not internally, but every one of us who goes through a movement screen is going to feel something when we run up against that pattern we can't do. And it's really easy, especially if you have a medical background or healthcare background or fitness background, to take that feeling of limitation, of tightness, of restriction, or loss of balance or inability and convert it to a conversation about a body part, when really all you've captured is a behavioral pattern. And behavioral patterns change quicker when we adjust perception first. We were just as guilty as most people in this arena. They saw and recognized functional problems a long time ago, just like we did, but they went to the immediate solution instead of developing the eye chart or BP cuff that tells you, is your solution working? We're just as enthused about that solution, but we want to make sure that we're using objective feedback. And there's not a lot of objectivity being talked about in this arena right now, not with the consistency we have with other medical devices or fitness tracking devices. We need to get consistent and reliable with this baseline, and life and movement will tell us which is the most productive path to regain function. But I need you to appreciate what we did. All your ideas about how to get function back do not mean a thing to science if you don't have a baseline that seems to be reliable and consistent, and then you can modify things against that baseline. You can prove change because you measured it first.
All right. Well, you just heard the why and the logic behind the functional movement screen. So, hopefully that gets you excited about what we're going to be learning as we cover more of the functional movement screen. So stay tuned for that. And so just to get some conversations going, let me move over here. Yeah, Black Friday is coming up in just a few weeks. This is what we did last year, so I wanted to kind of kick off the conversation and have people share what they might be doing this year. You'll see that there was $97 baskets They had a 1 month gift certificate in there for a non-member, lottery tickets, holiday protein bars, coffee mug. There was a $147 basket that included a My Zone, to get more people using the My Zone. Otherwise, the baskets were pretty much the same. Something I'd like to mention for the local locations is we can probably include adult prom tickets this year. Now, that will make for a bigger basket. That's something it's only really for you to be able to dress up your basket, because we will be having the proceeds of this. They're going to be going to a fundraiser. I think this year we were going to be choosing, I think it was a cancer one, but I'll get with Cindy on that. The pricing and all that still has to be updated. So more to come on that, but let us know if you think you'd like to add the prom tickets to your basket. Could be a good time of year to try to get those out. So there it is, guys. I'm going to leave it to you to discuss what you're doing for Black Friday. Remember to discuss about your t-shirt collaborations or your sweatshirt design collaborations. In fact, we're working on one right now, and I'll just share it with you here as quickly as I can. I have Dan from Fitzpatrick's in my email here, and see here. I'll get it up there for you. There it is. Possible hoodie order. Okay. All right. So I sent him a little picture from the blanket that I shared with you guys a couple weeks ago, and he took that and made a new design. So we're working. It's funny. He sent it back to me with the Corning logo. I said, "Oh, it looks great. I just need the Sarah logo on there." But we put the fun and functional fitness. So he was recreating that t-shirt design that we had years ago. So again, this is something that I'll share, but just encouraging you guys to all share what you got going on. All right, that's it for me. Turning it over to Londonderry to host and facilitate, of course, a little discussion on the Black Friday, share what's working in your location, anything that we can do to collaborate on more designs. All right, thanks so much.